Mainly my problem is with Mills. We are not a fan of him here. I would have liked to see them take Franks.
Franks went undrafted.
They'll rue the day they passed on Felipe Franks.
Welcome back to, I think, the third episode of Stay Hot. I'm Matthew Sponauer, joined as always.
Fourth episode. Right?
Come on,
okay. The fourth episode of Stay Hot. I'm joined by Theo Ash and Blaiden Kirk, as always. Theo Ash and Blaiden Kirk, say what's up.
What's up?
What's up?
We're just talking about the draft today a little bit. We talked about it last episode some, but that was only after the first round, and it was at 1 a.m., so we were all super tired, and I don't know if my analysis was on point at that time. But now that the whole draft's done and we've had a couple of days to think about it, we're going to get right into it. But first, the Browns had a good draft, in my opinion. I think they did well. But Blaiden has maybe taken that to the extreme and said that they are extreme. The absolute best. It's the extreme.
It's not extreme.
He said that they are it's extreme. He said that they are the absolute best team in the league right now. Blaiden, you got to defend yourself.
Do I really have to defend myself?
Yes.
Well, no, but like,
no, you're right. We should just take that. No, why do you think that?
We're coming off a season where they had the best offensive line in football. They still have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They're getting Odell back. The only question for me is if Baker is going to be able to play like a top 10 caliber quarterback again.
But we're not talking about whether or not the Browns are good. You can sit here and list off like all the reasons why we think they're good, because I do think the Browns are going to be a really good team next year.
Yeah, I
mean, we would have to sit here and talk.
We agree they're obviously a playoff team.
Yeah, but but they're not. Are they better than the Rams? Are they better than the Buccaneers? Are they better than the
Rams?
They're better than the Rams. I don't think they are better than the Rams.
Are they better? You better be saying yes to every team.
Yeah. Who?
The only team that I think the Browns on paper are better than every team in the NFL. The only team that I think we might have trouble beating is the Ravens, just because I don't think we're set to beat their power run scheme.
Who is your interior defensive lineman? Who are they? You know, who is Greg Newsome good
for
sure?
I looked this up before the podcast.
Yeah. Is Greg Newsome for sure good? Is Greedy Williams for sure good? Is JOK for sure good? Is your other linebackers for sure good? Is Clowney for sure good? Is Baker even for sure elite?
Solid linebackers.
Like who?
No, see, but this is the problem. The front seven is consisted of Myles Garrett and a bunch of guys who aren't really proven to be like the answer yet. And I don't think that they're all going to be bad.
The secondary is extremely injury prone. That's Newsome's big problem. I think he was hurt like 14 and healthy 17 of his last couple of games. He was hurt a lot in college. Ward is always hurt. There's Troy Hill, who's like fine. I think the Lions are not the Lions. That's later. I think the Browns are quite good, but like I think the Rams are better. I think the Ravens are better. I think that they're a more complete team than the Chiefs are, but I don't know. I've got my own problems with the Chiefs as well. But I think the Rams, Buccaneers, and assuming what happens with Rodgers, the Packers are better than the Browns. Ravens, I think, are more complete than the Browns. I don't know. I don't see. There's a lot of questions on that Browns team.
I would agree. There's definitely some question marks.
And going back to Baker, that's the other thing is I am not. Are you totally sold on Baker? As a Browns fan, do you think he's totally it and you would pay him and he's the guy of the future? Do you think that?
I need to see how he plays this year before I want to, shell out $40 million. But as long as he plays at similar to how he did last year, I think we'll be fine.
Yes, but can you win a Super Bowl? That's the only thing is like being fine and being the best are very different. I don't know. I feel like you got the Rams.
I think you need it. I think you need a top 10 caliber quarterback to win a Super Bowl, and I think the Browns have that.
Top 10? I don't know
caliber.
About that.
Top 10 caliber.
Know.
There's a difference.
I don't know. I think he's kind of in that second tier.
Because Jimmy Garoppolo would not be a top 10 caliber quarterback.
I don't think Baker's top 10 caliber at this point. I think he's in that Cousins, Garoppolo, like Goff.
Cousins is better than Garoppolo.
Like Carr. He is probably a little bit better than Garoppolo, but like Carr, Garoppolo, Baker, like I don't think that those are like, I don't consider them elite. I don't. Like they're good, but they're not elite. I consider like Rodgers.
We may have
Mahomes,
different definitions.
I don't know,
elite
but I don't think
your top 5 guys.
You've got a quarterback that you're not totally sold on for paying. That's not good. Like that's not terrible, but it's not great. The Buccaneers had a quarterback that they were sold on. The Chiefs had a quarterback that they were sold. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they should be the best. I like the Browns a lot. Not the best team in the league.
Yeah, no. I just when you look at some of the other teams, like the Buccaneers, no way the Browns are better on paper than the Buccaneers. You're saying they're the best team in the league, but I guarantee you go look at the Buccaneers, you go look at the Browns roster, you'd agree that the Buccaneers roster is better. What are the Browns better
Buccaneers
at?
Roster, I'll give the Buccaneers roster is probably better.
And they just won a Super Bowl. They're better at quarterback. They're better at tight end. They're better at receiver. Their offensive lines are a wash.
I would give the Browns O-line.
I don't know. Their O-line is pretty close.
Really?
Weapons probably Bucks.
Like worst
defensive backs might be the Browns. I think that's the Browns actually.
No, I would give the Browns DBs. The Buccaneers DBs were actually not that good last year.
They were okay, but yeah, the Browns.
But then the Buccaneers take linebackers by a mile.
Yes,
and I like their defensive line better too. Although it's kind of, I'd say just their pass rushing unit as a whole is better.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Browns are very close, and I think that Super Bowl should be the goal for them, but they shouldn't be. I don't think they're the best. I think the Buccaneers and the Rams. I'm telling you, the Rams are going to be so good this year. They have maybe the best 2 defensive players in football.
Oh no, I'm sold on
Jalen
the Rams
Ramsey.
too.
Jalen, you just said the Browns were better than the Rams, but the Rams have Matthew Stafford, who's a vet who was surviving in Detroit with, he's had some good. I hate that Stafford has never had. He had Calvin Johnson and Galladay, so how bad could they be? But he was surviving in the majority of the time in Detroit this season with nobodies at wide receiver. TJ Hawkinson's a really good tight end, but the wide receivers were nobodies. The coaching staff was a mess. The defense was historically awful. And on the same side, or on the other side in LA, you had Jared Goff getting his hand held by Sean McVay, and they were still a powerhouse, and they were still in the playoffs in a really tough division, and they've still been to the Super Bowl. And I think when you combine McVay with a quarterback who actually knows what he's doing, and then a defense that has Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and I know John Johnson left, but their safeties are still pretty solid. Darius Williams, I think the Rams are kind of the team to beat. I think that they are going to be so deadly.
Yeah, no, I agree. The Rams are really, really good, but I think the main difference that I have is that the Rams lost quite a few pieces on defense. I know they're very deep, so they can withstand that, but the difference is they were playing with the Chiefs. They were about to beat the Chiefs. And I think the Browns adding those defenses.
Nope.
They were going
to. No, they weren't. They lost to Chad Henne. They lost to Chad Henne. Chad Henne almost sold the game, and they still lost. They almost beat the Chiefs, who are missing the MVP, their MVP level quarterback in the back third of the game. That's not almost beating a team.
Yeah,
and the Chiefs,
that game.
And
I
do
Chiefs
think weren't the Super Bowl champions.
I do think that the Chiefs and the Browns. I do think the Browns do now match up pretty well with the Chiefs because I think Ward on Hill is pretty good, and I think JOK on Kelsey is going to be pretty good. And the Chiefs have some problems, I think, on the defense, and I do think they match up well with the Chiefs. But yeah, they were in that last playoff game. I would probably concede that game was a 5-point game that probably looked a little bit closer than it actually was.
It was close, but it was close because the Chiefs were missing their best player, not because the Browns were that close to them. Mahomes had been in,
but the Browns weren't close. We can't just sit here and act like the Browns weren't, in contention to win that game.
Right? Okay, they almost beat a team that didn't go on to win the Super Bowl. So that. I don't know what I'm supposed to make of that. Yeah. And I'm not Chad Henne had a horrible interception that almost cost the Chiefs the game that I'm feeling pretty confident Mahomes wouldn't have made. I don't know. I think the Browns, It's like I don't know. You look at the Browns roster, and is the defense really that good, or is it just like name listing, where you see all these tweets or people just like tweet out the list of their roster and be like, who's stopping this? But then it's not actually as strong as they're making it out to be. Like, for instance, your linebacker unit. I'm not saying that it can't be good. I'm saying that it's relying on a 220-pound second-round linebacker who might have heart problems to come in and be awesome day one. And that is a very big ask.
You would have
anybody.
said the same thing about the Bills front four last year.
The Bills front four last year was not
good.
They weren't good last year.
It can work out sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, but they were able to mitigate that. And that's a valuable asset of your team, your front four. The Browns are dealing with, analytically speaking at least, a significantly less valuable unit being, like, not great.
Yeah, I mean, they're good.
I don't know.
I don't know. They're not as good as the Bucs or the Rams, in my opinion. And I think we all agree that they're not as good as the Bucs. So that's the bottom line on the Browns, I think. They did have a really good draft, though. They did have a really good draft, though.
As a team, though.
Right, so do I. I mean, I like the Browns a lot, but I just don't see the argument that they're better than the Bucs. But they did have a really good draft. Speaking of, Matt, your Panthers, I was really impressed on how they did. They cleaned up, and some other teams cleaned up. But why don't you talk about the Panthers here?
Same thing that I was just talking about with the Browns. It's like the Panthers are going to be really good on offense. If this third round tackle, Christensen, comes in and it can start at left tackle day one, and if Sam Darnold, a guy who looked really not that great for 3 years, can come in and turn it around day one, and if the defense were like, there's a lot of question marks on defense, if that can all come together, we could be a good team. But it's a lot of ifs. And the odds of everything breaking in your favor in the NFL is pretty low. With most teams, you don't like go into the season if you're like trying to compete with just no answer at that, like at a single position. I feel like that's how like the Panthers are. You look at the roster, you'd be like, oh, we're fine at every week. We've got everything figured out. But I think there's, we're relying on a lot of stuff that's big question marks. I do think Darnold's going to do all right. Like, I think he'll be okay. He put up decent stats, not last year, but the year before or whatever. And this is the best situation he's ever been in by a lot. But am I supposed to expect him to come out here and be a top 10 quarterback? I just can't do that. I don't hate the move, but I just don't expect him to be that amazing.
No, I think that's the right take to have.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you think they can make the playoffs? I mean, looking at your division, do you think the Panthers can make the playoffs?
I don't know. They could.
What's your percent? Maybe a percentage. Like, what percent chance would you give them?
30%, 40%, somewhere in that
higher.
range.
That's higher than I would give them.
Not 30,
really,
40%.
That's lower than I would give them.
That's fair. The rest of their offense, I mean, they have a lot of weapons on offense, and I really like, I really like our receivers right now and whatnot. Like, there's some parts of this team that are going to be a problem for any team to handle. I like the JC Horn pick. I wanted them to grab Fields there. I'm not going to lie, but I really like the JC Horn pick. I think we've got a bunch of athletes on defense right now that, Jeremy Chin's going to, like, maybe we don't have the most complete defense, but Brian Burns is going to make plays. Jeremy Chin's going to make plays. Hopefully JC Horn's going to come make plays. But I'll also admit that we're one or two injuries on offense, especially like Darnold or the offensive line, away from being really, like, if Taylor Moton goes down, the offensive line is horrible. That is the only person on that offensive line I'm super confident in going into next year. McCaffrey might not be able to stay healthy. Terrence Marshall has, injury problems. DJ Moore's coming off an injury. I don't know. I like the draft, though. I thought we got good value overall. Like, what did you think?
I thought that Horn was interesting. He was my cornerback 4, to be completely honest. So I thought that was a little bit of a reach at 8, but I still thought he was good. I don't hate that pick. And it was a pick of need, which I like when you take guys that you really need. Yeah. So, and I really like Davion Nixon. I think he's super good. And I think Terrace Marshall Jr. was one of my highest graded guys. So yeah, the Panthers had a really good draft. Can I talk about a draft that is getting slept on right now? And literally was, I thought, the best.
Is it going to be the Lions?
Yes, it's going to be the Lions. Oh my Lord, did they
Let's go.
destroy it? If they draft
the
this,
Lions cleaned up.
If they draft like this with all the picks picks that they have over the next like 2 or 3 years, they're going to turn it around so fast. They just drafted badass after badass, and they didn't reach on. It wasn't like the Raiders where it's like we have our guys that we want, and then it's like some 7th round guy that they draft round 2. No, they got badasses, and they got good value for them. Like Penei Sewell at 7, like badass.
Incredible.
He was a top 3 prospect. They got him at 7. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown at the catch point, badass, catches everything. They got him in round 4? He was supposed to go round 2. Jamar Jefferson, I think, right? Badass. He's going to run through you. He's going to run right through you. They got him in the 7th round. He was supposed to go like round 4 or 5. That corner out of Syracuse. Oh man, I'm going to botch his name. Melifonwu, I think his last name is. Badass. He's huge. Like great tackler. Like a guy who has some tech. His back pedal is really upright and awkward to watch, but he's a badass, and they can fix that. They're on day 2 giant pass rushing defensive tackles. They allowed more rushing yards after contact last year than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did in total. They could not tackle. They had they got a linebacker who's really good at tackling. Just badass after badass, and they're going to, if they have like. They didn't fix the wide receiving core, but on a team with that many issues, it was impossible to fix everything. And they're just going to run it down teams. Like they're probably not going to throw the ball a whole lot. So like the wide receiving core doesn't matter for this year. But if they go and draft like this again next year and then fill the wide, like they are going, and the whole offseason, like getting 3 firsts for Stafford, avoiding overpaying Galladay, and having all this cap space in the future now. Like, I love everything the Lions did this offseason. Like, I think that I legitimately believe Campbell, and they're like, I believe that they can turn it around in a hurry here.
I don't think I've ever heard somebody talk so highly of a division rival before. That was incredible.
Well, see, he can do that because, he's not really worried about the Lions being a threat this season still.
Not this year.
Man, the Lions are knocking off Green Bay this year.
I think they're heading the right direction. I do. Like, I 100% agree with you. But it's fun to see, like, the different themes that some of these, like, okay, you see the sort of, like, type of player that the Lions like. Then you go see the type of player that the Panthers like. The Panthers just drafted a bunch of athletes, Hubbard and Terrence Marshall and, I can't remember his name, that tackle in the 5th round that they got.
Davion Nixon, I think.
Mine, but Nixon, yeah, crazy athlete. So or like you said, the Raiders in particular, but like maybe they're type of guy, or maybe they do that a little bit too strongly and they try too hard to get their guys and it hurts them a little bit. What type of, I guess I got to give you a second to talk about what your favorite.
I don't know. The Packers have, I don't want to talk about the Packers anymore. I'm going to please ask Blaiden a question. I don't want to talk about the Rodgers of the Packers.
I was going to ask Blaiden a question. Don't worry.
We suck. Ask it to Blaiden. I don't want to talk about it.
I assume, Matt, you're going to ask me what my favorite draft was.
That's what I was going to ask in the first place.
Oh, I thought you said.
Yeah, I was asking you what your favorite. Yeah, because you already talked about your favorite draft, Theo.
Okay, well, so I've been on Twitter giving out, my draft grades. 4 teams that I gave an A+. And I think that's really generous. Usually I don't think I would give 4 teams an A+. But it was the Browns, the Lions, the Panthers, and then the other team that I'll talk about right now is the Dolphins. And I think we can all agree that Miami had a crazy draft. I mean, they took Waddle, right, with the 6th pick. And, maybe some people would say that was a reach, but you could very easily argue that Waddle could have, been wide receiver 1. I think the gap between Waddle and Smith really isn't that great. They took Jalen Phillips in the 1st round at 18, who I think, Theo, you might have had him as your top defensive player.
I had him as the 4th best player overall and my best defensive player. Yeah.
And then they took Javon Holland in the 2nd. Like, they went absolutely ridiculous for, like, the entire draft. I mean, everything they did, they filled needs and they got, high-level players. And that's kind of, I think, what I defined as an A+ grade, is when you can get high-level players at positions of need. And I think those are the kind of the 4 teams that did that really well.
Yeah, I totally agree with the Dolphins. They crushed it.
We're going to get into the drafts that we didn't like so much here in a second, but I noticed that you didn't give the Bears an A because you say that they didn't need to.
I didn't give them an A+.
I gave them an A+.
I gave them an A-.
The Bears had a weird offseason.
You didn't give the Bears an A plus because you say that they didn't need to jump up that high to get Fields. 100% disagree. 100% disagree.
I can understand. I saw today that Minnesota said that they would have taken Fields at 14, but I seriously I don't think they had to trade up to 11. You could have traded up to 13. Maybe you could have traded up to 14.
Well, first off, you don't know who's willing to trade. Not maybe the Chargers are just like, screw that, we want to sit here and take Slater. So 13's not an option. 14, the Vikings wouldn't do it because they wanted Fields. But most importantly, anybody else could have traded up and gotten them. You're not like trading up to get above people. You're trading up so other people also don't trade up. That's why, for example, the 49ers traded up to 3, even though they didn't really need to get in front of Miami or get Miami out of that spot, because Miami's not taking a quarterback. They just wanted to make sure that they got their guy.
Yeah, no, it's I wasn't sitting here saying the Bears did a bad job. I'm just like,
no.
In terms of it's just like in terms of, an A+ draft means that you could not have done anything better, basically. And I'm just like, had they been able to sit at 20 and take Fields, that would have been a perfect draft. But obviously you couldn't. And part of getting an A+ is being a little bit lucky. So
I agree with you 100%. I wasn't trying to make it sound like you were saying that Fields was a bad pick or anything. And I do get they did give up a good bit to move up. But we got to get into some of the bad drafts. And my answer for this is maybe a little unfair, I feel like. But the Texans, even with the picks that they had, I feel like that's valid though. Even with the picks that the Texans had, I do not feel like they did a good job. Mainly my problem is with Mills. We are not a fan of him here. I would have liked to see them take Franks instead. You know how
Franks went undrafted.
Franks went undrafted.
I know.
They will rue the day, the NFL, the league will rue the day that all 256, I think it is, picks, none of them were the giant quarterback with the huge arm and elite athleticism who turned the Arkansas program around and won 3 SEC games after they went 0-16 in those games over the last however many years. They'll rue the day they passed on Felipe Franks. Mark my words, this preseason, I'm going to see him do something awesome, and I'm not going to shut up about it. But yeah, Davis Mills, he's no good. He's banking off of what he did in high school, really, still to this day, because he only started 11 games at Stanford and wasn't particularly accurate or smart or mobile or really anything in those games. There were some flashes of really nice anticipation, and his arm strength. I mean, he looked like NFL arm strength, but it wasn't oh my God, NFL arm strength. It was okay, yeah, that's probably okay NFL arm. But yeah, for that to be their number 1 pick and them in all likelihood now going from Deshaun Watson to Mills has got to
over Mond, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. I think there was that little run that went Mills, Mond.
I'm surprised that Mond fell as far as he did.
Trask
at 64.
That was ridiculous too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take over right now. Trask, the Buccaneers had the worst draft in my mind. Taking Trask in the second round is we talked about Leatherwood was a bad pick. The ETN pick was bad. And taking Harris in the first round, I don't love, even though I love Harris as a player. Kyle Trask in the second round is the worst pick of the draft, and I think by a long shot.
There's nothing that Kyle Trask is particularly good at, which is just mind-blowing. And Brady, at this point, I'm not going to say anything about Brady retiring until he does. And once he legitimately declines and is gone, then I'll say it's a possibility that he declines and is gone. Going from Brady to Trask is just not, and you're so cool. You're in kind of this win now kind of mode still. You could have used a second round pick on something else. Trask, his footwork is not very good. He's not very again, kind of like Mills is he's just he makes some, he's not even a great decision maker. He's decently accurate, Trask is. And that's about the only NFL level trait that he has. And that's not worth a second round pick at all. I thought the Cowboys were another team that I just really didn't like their draft at all. Micah Parsons. The off the field stuff is pretty bad. And he came forward and pretty much said I hope that doesn't like define me as a person. So maybe he's better now. I don't know. But like to take a guy with character issues, to take an off-ball linebacker when you have, I mean, Jalen Smith and Van Der Esch are not very good, so I guess that's okay. But like, I don't know. I just thought, and Parsons, it'll be interesting to see how the people who sat out 2020 end up doing, like all of them. There's a lot of them, but to have a guy whose 2019 tape was to take an off-ball linebacker who's questionable in coverage, very much more of a blitzer, at a position where I don't think it was their biggest need and has off-the-field issues. I thought that was bad. I thought their entire second round was pretty much all reaches. I'm not a big Kelvin Joseph fan, who they took 44th overall. I thought he's kind of just a guy. They did make some decent moves on day 3, but when you start recovering a little bit on day 3, like at that point, the damage has already been done. So the Cowboys probably had maybe my least favorite draft. And honestly, the Packers had, I thought, a pretty bad draft just because I had a 3rd round grade on Eric Stokes, who they took 1st round. And that's where you really need to, hit is on those 1st round. Because if it but I thought the Cowboys had the worst draft.
I will say, to at least give to give the Cowboys a little bit of credit. I don't think they expected the Broncos to take Surtain at 9. Yeah. I think they kind of expected to have a corner there. And then they probably just went best player available. But I still, I wouldn't have Parsons as my best player available there at, 12?
For a team that's invested as much as the Cowboys have in linebacker, it's one of the weak spots of their defense. And that's
I know. For sure.
Kind of indicative of how they are at drafting. Like, they've invested a ton in their linebackers.
They have been an awful drafting team recently, and this draft did not give me any confidence that they have turned that around. I mean, CeeDee Lamb was a good pick because he literally fell like a 2-year-old could have made that pick, but like they have not gotten much production out of the draft classes recently.
Yeah, I did want to hit on real quick. I didn't get to talk about the Texans draft in its entirety. I do like Nico Collins. I think that was a solid pick. I do believe in him. As an Ohio State guy, I'm not a big believer in a lot of Michigan prospects. I don't think they do a very good job of developing their talent. Seriously, I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones was the number 1 wide receiver recruit. Never caught like more than 800 yards. 6th round draft pick. And I think he's a solid player, but that's if you get a number 1 receiver recruit, they should be. Yeah, he's been solid, but not as a top guy, which is what you expect. But when I watch Michigan, especially Ohio State, Michigan, but when I watch Michigan, Nico Collins jumped out, and he has been for a couple of years. So I thought that was a good pick, but I can't get past the Mills pick. I don't like it.
But yeah, it's tough because grades after drafts have never been a good predictor of what actually goes down. So, we don't know is not good content, but I say the Cowboys had a bad draft and the Lions had a great, but in reality, again, people don't, it's coaching. All these guys are clay that you mold into. They're going to get better or they're not going to get better. They're not going to get worse as athletes with an NFL training program, or at least most of them. They're not going to get dumber about football. It's just some of them are going to stay the same and some of them are going to get smarter and better and understand the game at the level up that you need to. And that comes down to coaching. And we can nail all of our evaluations on where they are coming out of college, but you can't nail how they're going to retain information and how that's going to translate. So that's my one thing that I've learned about this draft is I know watching some of these guys, I can tell that this dude is, I can tell that when I watch Penei Sewell, he's good at football. I can tell when I watch Jalen Waddle, okay, Jalen Waddle is really good at football. There's a good chance they bust, and it's not on the evaluators who watched him. It's on the coaches. And that's one thing about the draft that one thing we were talking about the Lions and Matt Patricia, Jeff Okudah, you can watch Jeff Okudah in college. And if you came away with this guy can't play, you'd be a bad evaluator. But you should be blaming Matt Patricia for getting to a guy like that. And he just looks like he's never played the sport before.
Yeah, no, that's 100% my philosophy about the draft. I think that's the one problem with the draft process that I don't like. People will watch, this year 2020 tape and they'll form their opinion on a prospect. But nobody comes in just great, like as good as they need to be for the NFL. Nobody is just getting drafted at that level. Almost nobody. I mean, there's a couple of guys maybe. So the most important thing to look for in a prospect is, have they improved? If they have the ability to improve, like, you don't need to be accurate. You need to be able to get accurate if you're a quarterback, right? And that's what I remember when I was looking at Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. You know, you could see how his passing numbers had improved a little bit, and then you go watch the tape, you could see how it became a better passer. So then that made me think, like, okay, you know, that you know, makes somebody think that, okay, even if he isn't a good passer now, if he goes to a good spot and he continues to improve, then he can become a solid quarterback, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. I would like to make one disclaimer about that is, you don't want to see these like one-hit wonder seasons. Those are immediate red flags, I think.
Yeah.
When a guy has like played bad before, like he has 2 or 3 really bad years in college, then his senior year he's like phenomenal. I would look for other reasons for why that may have happened.
For sure. The best of the best look good very soon. Like Penei Sewell was looking that good at age 18. Ridiculous. Jamar Chase, age 19. Like I don't know what Mahomes' breakout age was. It was probably like, he probably was not a senior coming out, but you know, yeah.
But I mean, being coachable is just so important. That's, granted, really hard, especially as just like a fan, to figure out if a guy is coachable or not. And that's why they bring players in for workouts and whatnot. And you know, that's why I feel like if you get a guy right, like if you're right about a prospect or a sleeper, a lot of it's luck, because I can't tell you what they're like as people, and I can't tell you what they're like, you know, to coach. Yeah. And that's, you know, a big part of it.
For sure. Now there are guys that we can speculate. Like, I think that this dude is going to like come in and like win rookie.
You hear stories.
Yeah, like there are guys that you can speculate are going to come in and like be an impact guy day one. And if like, I don't know, if you guys had to guess, who would you say that like day one, like rookie that is going to come in and crush it right away? Like if you had to guess, who would you say?
I assume we're not going to do quarterbtrue.
No quarterback. Yeah, quarterbacks. Like, I mean, obvious. I guess if you want to, but like we'll go with non-quarterbacks.
These quarterbacks have been talked to death.
Yeah, true. So non-quarterback. You think they come in and crush it right away? Blaiden, who have you got?
I'm actually about to make a video on this. I know you guys don't necessarily believe him. You think he's a little too small. I think JOK is going to be really good for the Browns. I think that ability to, you know, cover linebackers, and I think, you know, we talked about coaching. I think the Browns actually have a coach that might know how to use him. And if that's the case, I think he can be a really, really good addition to our defense.
That was the problem that's why he fell. Everyone's like, why did JOK fall? Because he's a hard guy to scheme for. Like he's a tweener, and you need a very specific idea of what he's going to do in mind. So yeah, Browns have coach of the year. So a coach of the year would probably be pretty good at thinking of something like that. How about you, Matt?
I would hope so.
No, I agree with JOK. I mean, he's like Jeremy Chin's size, and you know that's why those type of guys. Yeah, like I agree. That's why those type of guys fall. But when you have a guy like, I feel like Matt Rule does a good job of putting his defensive players in a position to succeed, then them being a tweener isn't such a big deal. And I think the Browns have a pretty big possibility of doing the same thing with JOK. I mean, I usually try to give like interesting takes on the podcast because that's what makes it more fun.
All right, so Pitts, here we go.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. Not exactly a bold take, but at least I won't get flamed for it. You know, 6 months from now, because he's probably going to be good. With this, I'm going Sewell. I'm very confident Sewell is going to be good. People started to knock him a little bit as the process went on a little bit. We're not a ton, right? But I remember like a year ago, Sewell was going to be the next generational guy at offensive tackle, and then this year it's like he's the number one guy and he's crazy good. But some teams had Slater over him. Sewell just has that mentality. You got to go watch. Like, you're not performing on a high level at 18 years old in college and then not doing well in the NFL. I just don't believe that.
So Pitts was too blasé. So you went like the next best prospect with Sewell.
My point is that usually I try to go with interesting takes, but I don't want to get roasted here. If I go with like, this guy's going to be a day one starter, and then I pick some like 3rd round draft pick, and my odds of being
I am curious, like who is your interesting take then? I am curious.
I've got like a second round pick. I think my boy Asante Samuel Jr. is a guy who's going to kind of be a day one impact starter. I think that he's undersized, but like put him in nickel and you're going to be absolutely fine. His technique is really good. You know, son of a player, obviously Asante Samuel. And that Chargers team is another kind of scary one that looks quite complete when I look at it. I see Derwin James and I see Bosa and I see, that offensive line is so much more improved in Herbert throwing to some solid weapons. And I think like the cornerback room is a little questionable. And I think that Asante Samuel is a guy who's kind of not out of the, like everyone I think knows who Asante Samuel Jr. was going to be in this class. But like, I think that's a guy who's going to step in at least in nickel to start. We'll see if he's on the boundary covering number ones, but I think he's going to step in as a nickel guy immediately and help that Chargers team, compete for, probably not going to win the division, but compete for a playoff spot. They're going to need to have him play well. And I think he's going to live up to it.
There is one guy who I don't think is going to make I'm pretty confident isn't going to make a day one impact, that I really like where he went. And that's Kellen Mond. The Vikings is kind of a sneaky good spot for him. I feel like
yes.
There's absolutely no pressure for him to start this season, but if he does well in camp and he impresses that, the Vikings organization, then there's a very good path to him moving to that starting role because I think Cousins' contract is done after this season. And I feel like, they've got a pretty good supporting cast for a quarterback. Maybe their offensive line isn't actually all that, but they added Darisaw, so that's a good start with that. They've got a good running back. They've got good receivers. I like Irv Smith Jr. as well.
I think that his contract is done in 2 years is the only thing, but that he might need 2 years because Mond, his mechanics are a little bit wonky and,
a little bit.
They're a little. He throws the football like it's a dart. He throws the football like it's a dart. Full transparency. But like 2 years behind Cousins could do him well. And he's not going to be making much money behind Cousins. And that's the one thing about like drafting a guy you love to get the full rookie deal. But with the second round, it doesn't quite matter as much as it would if you were like, say, the Packers drafting Jordan Love, and then your plan is to not start him for like his entire rookie deal. But I agree that Mond throwing to Thielen and Jefferson and having Cook there and the offensive line is not very good right now. But I thought they made some good picks there, and in 2 years maybe it'll be good. And I assume Jefferson will still be good and Cook will still be good for them in 2 years. So. Mond definitely is someone who's probably no one's going to think about for a little bit, but he might at the end, in 5 years, we might look back at Mond with the benefit of sitting and the benefit of a good roster and a good organization, be like, whoa, why he did end up being better than a lot of the guys picked in the first. I agree with that.
No, but I think the Vikings casually had one of the better drafts. I gave them an A-. I don't know. What you guys felt about them, but the fact they got Darisaw at 23, that was insane. And then they got Kellen
and they were able to get other.
Why I don't.
I
love
thought Patrick
Davis,
Jones.
but,
I had an undrafted free agent grade on Patrick Jones, who they drafted in the third round. Chaz Surratt is good, but he's also 24. Chaz Surratt is older than Tremaine Edmonds. Chaz Surratt is older than Tremaine Edmonds, and Tremaine Edmonds Tremaine Edmonds was drafted 4 years ago. That's ridiculous. That's the only. So Chaz, I thought he was okay, not good against the run, and kind of developmental, and I didn't quite realize how old he was, and that's a problem. So I didn't love the Vikings draft, but they had some good picks in there.
I think that about wraps up the show for today, but there are one thing I wanted to ask. Blaiden, you've been eating cereal this entire episode. I don't know. I know the listeners
do you have a problem with it?
See it. No, I have no problem with you eating the cereal, but those are Frosted Flakes. We're on a Zoom call and I could see.
No, this is Honey Bunches of Oats. Honey Bunches of Oats. Man.
Has that not gotten soggy?
That is true. It's been sitting here this entire. Are you going to eat the rest of that bowl?
We've been recording for an hour.
I can see he's looking at it in disgust.
So here's what's happened.
He's looking at it in disgust now. He knows that it's gross.
Yep, you've barely touched that cereal. When you pour yourself a bowl of cereal, you gotta be ready to go. Like if I eat like Frosted Flakes, for example, they got to be done in 10 minutes, or they're gonna get soggy, and then they're no good.
Look at you.
So is that what you've done to yourself?
Look, he's trying to choke it down, but you can tell he's grossed out.
The fifth.
You can tell he doesn't want to actually do this.
All right, that does it here for us today. Please subscribe, rate us a 5-star, download the episode, follow us if you're on Spotify.
Get us back to number 1.
Get us back to number 1. We'll be back Friday, and if you leave us a review, we might be reading a couple of them on the show next episode. So something to look forward to. Thank you all for tuning in.
May the 4th be with you.
Is that today?